What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 67 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Thursday, April 10th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malin. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NBA as the New York Knicks are in action tonight. A 7 o'clock start on the road, taking on the Detroit Pistons. Let's go back to Tuesday's game, though, as the Knicks, for the fourth time this season, have lost to the Boston Celtics. Celtics win this one in overtime at MSG, 119-117. And like I said, 4-0 the Celtics are against the Knicks this season, and that does not give Knicks fans and the Knicks players too much optimism heading into the playoffs for a postseason series that may have them go up against the Boston Celtics. And in the end, the Knicks just weren't good enough down the stretch in this one. They obviously had that rough third quarter. They had the lead heading into the halftime break. They were up 6, but then the third quarter, Celtics come back, a 31-20 victory in the third quarter for Boston. And then in the fourth, the Knicks fight back and they win that quarter by 5, and they force overtime in the end, but it was actually Boston who forced overtime. Jason Tatum hits a big-time three-pointer over OG Anunoby late in the game with the Celtics down 3, and that one forces overtime, and eventually the Celtics would win this one in OT. Kristaps Porzingis comes back to haunt the Knicks once again. He had 34 in this one, along with 8 3-pointers. And obviously the big one came in overtime with 40 seconds to go, and it gave the Celtics a 3-point lead. So this is a rough one for the New York Knicks to swallow, and they obviously have to head into the postseason, probably going to end up facing Boston. But this one is far from over, and the playoff race is far from over in the Eastern Conference, as right now the New York Knicks sit with the 3 seed, most likely going to clinch that. However, Indiana is still right behind the Knicks, and I mean, the Pacers are rolling right now. They're on a 5-game win streak, and they're only 2 games back of the New York Knicks. The Knicks have 3 games left this season at Detroit, which is tonight. Then they have tomorrow night, where they go back home to take on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland not going to play any of their star men, as they've already clinched the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And then the Knicks finish off the season on the road at the Brooklyn Nets. And that one's going to be an interesting one as well, because Brooklyn's going to come up with their best game and try and stop the Knicks party from happening and really hurt the Knicks in the playoffs if they possibly can. When you look at Indiana, though, they have a game tonight against that Cleveland team that I said was benching all of their star players due to clinching the 1 seed in the East. They have to take on Cleveland tonight, the Pacers do, at 7 o'clock. Then they have a back-to-back. They also play tomorrow against the Orlando Magic, though, at 7 o'clock. And then they finish off the season, the Pacers do, at Cleveland, a 1 o'clock game on the road. When you look at those games, though, they should go 3-0 and probably finish off the season on an 8-game win streak. The Knicks, however, have to win one of these 3 games. If they win one of the games, they will end up clinching the 3 seed. So whether it comes tonight against Detroit, whether it comes the next day, tomorrow, when you look at that game against Cleveland, which they should probably comfortably win, but you never know with this Knicks team. And then probably it should win that one on Sunday against the Brooklyn Nets. But again, you never know with this Knicks team. And Brooklyn, like I said, is going to throw their best punches at the Knicks on that Sunday matinee in the NBA. So when you look at tonight's game, though, the Knicks are resting a bunch of their guys, and that's a big storyline heading in. Still obviously not favored in this one, but still projected probably to win this game. They go on the road 7 o'clock tonight, taking on the Detroit Pistons up in Detroit. And the Pistons come into this game as 3.5-point favorites, total sitting at 229.5. And when you look at the Knicks, like I said, they're benching some of their top guys. Mitchell Robinson, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart will all be out for this one, whether it's really cleaning up some of those injuries. The Knicks got beat up in that game against Boston. They don't want to risk any of these guys, especially considering they clinched a spot in the playoffs and have a playoff spot for a while now. Yes, they are still looking to close out this 3 seed and lock down that 3 seed, but Obviously, health is really more important when it comes to those 7 game series rather than a regular season game like it is tonight against Detroit. On the other side, though, there's a couple of game time decisions. Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris are two of the names, and Jaden Ivey is out for this one and has been out for a while. But when you look at those other two guys, and Harris and Cunningham, I mean, it also gives the Knicks a bit of a shot to control things tonight. Of course, New York still has their star men in Jalen Brunson as well as Karl Anthony Towns. So you expect them to come out strong here and probably find a win, but they are on the road against Detroit, and Detroit has been real solid this season, although the last couple of games have been very, very shaky for the Pistons. Still looking to close down either the 5 or 6 seed in the Eastern Conference, but Milwaukee has caught up to Detroit and really made up some ground. So now it's a 2 game advantage for the Bucks. And if they win, whether it's tonight or tomorrow night, the Bucks will be the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. So we'll see what happens. Still a lot left, though, for the New York Knicks, as they still have to get one more win to clinch that 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, with Indiana right on their back. So we'll see what happens tonight, but make sure you tune in 7 o'clock as the Knicks take on the Detroit Pistons. Let's shift things to baseball, and we'll start things off with the New York Mets, who had their 6 game winning streak snapped yesterday afternoon in a 5-0 loss to the Miami Marlins. And when you look at that game overall, Tyler McGill just did not have his best stuff from the beginning in that game, and really got the pitch count way up there in the early innings, and he's credited with his first loss of the season. Just a bad day at the office overall for the New York Mets. An ugly looking lineup card at the end of the game for the Mets, as they really struggled to get past Max Meyer, who had a great 5 or 6 innings or so. He went 6 1/3, only 2 hits allowed, had a no-hitter hanging in the balance for a little while, but then the Mets finally broke it up. But really, overall, New York only has 2 hits on the day, one from Francisco Lindor, the other from Pete Alonso. That, if there is a positive sign from this game, it's really been this homestand overall, really woken up the bat of Francisco Lindor, who really struggled in the early parts of the season when they went on the road to Houston and Miami. When you look at these last couple of series, though, they took on the Toronto Blue Jays. Credit to the pitching staff, who was tremendous in that series against Toronto, against a really tough Blue Jays lineup that's been pretty built for the last couple of years or so. They looked really strong, the pitching staff did. But then you had guys like Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso, who really got the offense going. And I feel like that's a real positive sign for Mets fans, especially looking at how they've been at Citi Field so far this season. 5-1 record, but a lot of the credit has to go to Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso. Like I said, Lindor is batting over 400 this season now at Citi Field. Pete Alonso around the same, and a lot of home runs, plenty of RBIs to come. And really, when you look at the guy in the middle of that lineup, or in the middle of those two, in Juan Soto, all the money given to him, $765 million. He hasn't lived up to the biggest start just yet for a man who's paid all of that money. However, I do think the on-base streak that he had going was a real positive sign, because it almost sets up for guys like Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, even behind Alonso, to really get things going. And Alonso's been red hot so far. And when you have a guy like Juan Soto getting on base, that only helps a guy like Pete Alonso, who's been tremendous with runners on base this season and runners in scoring position as well. So that's a real solid series in the end for the New York Mets. I know it really ended on a sour note. However, the last couple of series and this homestand overall, going 5-1, real positive sign for the Mets faithful, as the Mets now sit at 8-4 on the season, and they are a game back now of the Philadelphia Phillies at the top of the NL East. So we'll see what happens, as the New York Mets now have a interesting series coming up on the road in Sacramento to take on the Athletics. Of course, not the Oakland Athletics anymore. They are up in Sacramento. And obviously, that minor league ballpark could give some guys some opportunity here, whether it's Lindor, Alonso, maybe even Juan Soto. Give them the opportunity to get going here with the long ball, a little bit different from a traditional MLB ballpark that they'll see this season. However, when you look at this matchup, the next day, or tomorrow, excuse me, 10:05 start. It's Griffin Canning taking on JP Sears. They'll get things going in Sacramento, and Canning's been strong this year. Does have that 0-1 record, but a 2.79 ERA, a lot better from what you've seen in recent years from Griffin Canning, and a couple of solid starts for him in 9 2/3 innings so far this season, especially the strikeouts as well. Those are up from previous years. He's got 10 through 2 games. So we'll see what happens. Canning, Sears on the mound when the 8-4 Mets take on the 5-8 Athletics tomorrow, starting at 10:05. And obviously, we'll have more on that series as it goes on. But the Mets on the West Coast for this weekend, taking on the Athletics at 10:05 tomorrow. When you look at the other side, up in the Bronx, the New York Yankees are coming home finally after a 6-game road trip when they took on the Pittsburgh Pirates as well as the Detroit Tigers. Not the greatest trip for the Yankees overall, but they go 3-3 in the end. They grabbed the win yesterday in a tough game against the Detroit Tigers, one that looked like it would be pretty simple with how well Max Fried was pitching yesterday for the New York Yankees. But of course, Devin Williams will be the story for the New York Yankees today and probably into tomorrow, as he's struggled mightily to start this season. His ERA is up at 12 right now, and opponents batting .385 against him so far this season. Just got to figure things out. He went 2/3 of an inning in the ninth yesterday, allowed 2 hits, 3 earned runs, had 2 walks and 2 strikeouts. So just a bit of everything, and he's kind of a bit all over the place. And that's really not a good sight for a closer in New York City. Got to pick that up. He's got to get settled down. And obviously, I think he will do that. It's just he's never been a real strong pitcher in the month of April and into May. He's got to figure things out and settle down early in the season, especially if the Yankees are going to grab some wins. But really, when you look at yesterday, like I said, it's going to come all down to Max Fried. What a victory it is for the Yankees ace right now, and what a performance he had against the tough Detroit lineup that really had the Yankees number in the last couple of days. A lot of long balls, a lot of opportunities on base for the Detroit Tigers, and Max Fried completely shut this lineup down. He went 7 innings strong, 5 hits allowed, no earned runs, no walks, and 11 strikeouts on 97 pitches. And really, it's a great performance in the end, like I said, and he ends up getting credited with the win. And when you look at the Yankee lineup in this game, Ben Rice hit a home run. He's getting going so far this season, batting .306, and you can always rely on the other guy in Aaron Judge, who in the top of the ninth, and thank God he did, added to the Yankees' lead to make it 4-0. Of course, the 3 earned runs for Devin Williams in the bottom of the ninth, and this one finishes 4-3. The Yankees get a win. So I'm not freaking out about Devin Williams just yet. However, there is a guy in Luke Weaver who's looked really hot so far this season. And if Williams continues to struggle, we could see a bit of a switch for a little bit, as Luke Weaver could become the closer for the New York Yankees. And when he did that last year, real strong sight. And obviously, as a Yankee fan myself, I really trust Luke Weaver really more than anybody in that bullpen. He has been tremendous for the last year or so. And obviously, if he's still rolling and Devin Williams starts to struggle, then you're going to have to think about it, if you're Aaron Boone, of moving Weaver into that closer role. But the Yankees now take on the San Francisco Giants in a 3-game set back in the Bronx. It's going to be a 7:05 start tomorrow with Marcus Stroman on the mound taking on Robbie Ray. This one should be an interesting matchup. Of course, Ray, the lefty, who's 2-0 so far this season with a 3.18 ERA so far, and he's looked really strong, and so have the San Francisco Giants. How about the NL West with those 3 teams at the top? And then you even have Arizona, who's trying to sneak into the mix. The Giants, the Padres, the Dodgers all have looked red hot so far this season. And give credit to all of those teams. The NL West is going to be a gauntlet. And could that mean something for a team like the New York Mets if they are trying to fight and get in a tough division that is the NL East? So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But this one's going to be an interesting matchup. The Giants, like I said, coming in at 9-3 on the season. Yankees are at 7-5. And Ray takes on Stroman. Stroman trying to bounce back after a rough outing that he had back in Pittsburgh. But then you look at the next couple of days, it's going to be Warren against Hicks, most likely. And then on Sunday, at 1:35 start, it's going to be Rodon taking on Logan Webb. That should be a great matchup, a battle of, quote, the aces or soon to be aces for these teams. We'll see what happens in that one as a 1:35 start on Sunday. And then obviously the Yankees will stay home for a series against the Kansas City Royals that we'll talk about on Monday's episode. But we'll see what happens. Make sure you tune in tomorrow night. Both teams with an off day today, Mets and Yankees, but they're both in action tomorrow as the Mets are in Sacramento and the Yankees are back in the Bronx to take on the San Francisco Giants. Let's finish things off today with a college basketball update. And what a Final Four it was down in San Antonio. I talked about the Final Four games on Monday's episode. Make sure you go check those out. But then we have to talk about the championship game as Florida has been crowned national champions for the first time since 2007. They win this one 65-63 over the Houston Cougars, who really are just bumping their heads against the wall after that performance late down the stretch in this one. A game after Houston came all the way back in the last couple of minutes against the Duke Blue Devils to knock off really the favorite, it looked like, in the NCAA tournament this year in Duke. Then you look at Houston in this one, and just when the moment got too big, Houston was not there. Florida was the better team in the second half, and give credit to the Gators, who fought back down 12 in the second half, and they win the national championship. What a team Florida's been all season long. I do feel like they went through a gauntlet of a schedule in the SEC and then had a tough schedule and a tough region in the West region this year. They've done really everything this year, and they really fought through it. Give credit to a guy like Walter Clayton Jr., who did not have his best game in this one. It was Will Richard who led the Gators in points with 18. He had 4 threes and shot 5 of 10 from the field. And when you look at Walter Clayton, he only had 11 points, shot 3 of 10 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. Give credit to Houston as well, who made it not easy for Walter Clayton and did not let him control this game. However, when it came down to the biggest moment of the game, Emmanuel Sharp gets the ball, tries to put up a 3, and ends up almost traveling, could not pick up the ball. Alex Condon jumps on it, and Florida wins it. But it was all about the closeout of Walter Clayton Jr. What a play he makes to end it for Florida. And you wouldn't think Walter Clayton Jr. would do it on the defensive side and be the reason that Florida wins it on a defensive stop. But that's how good he is, and give credit to Walter Clayton Jr., who's probably got an NBA career ahead of him after a couple of great tournaments. And of course, this one especially, where he gets crowned the most outstanding player in the Final Four. So obviously, this is the end of the March Madness and obviously the end of the college basketball season. What a ride it's been. And Florida gets crowned champions. We had a great Final Four. And when people said maybe it was a boring year when it came to March Madness, not too many Cinderella stories, not too many upsets here. You got the best teams and the best matchups possible. You run the risk of, if there is a Cinderella story, that there is a blowout in the Final Four. These were no blowouts. These were phenomenal games, all down to the wire. And the national championship, also down to the wire. What a game we had on Monday night. And the Florida Gators are crowned national champions for the 3rd time in program history. So that's a very interesting story there for Walter Clayton Jr. and his guys, and give credit to the Gators who really stepped up big time and win their third national championship, like I said, in program history. But that'll do it for episode 67 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malin, but thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Monday.